Welcome to Singled Out, your ninth best gaming podcast. Please stand by.
Hello, Andrew here. This is an episode that was originally on Patreon. It's part of our series about a guild in around 30 minutes. This one is about the Cooks. It released on our Patreon feed last year, and now it's available for everyone. If you're interested in helping us out on Patreon, it's $5 a month. You get at least one episode a month. We are still going through our series about a guild in 30 minutes, and we are now offering a 3D print of veteran Captain Dirge for everyone who subscribes and is a patron for more than a month. So have a listen. This one's good. After all, it's free. And I'll see you later. In a minute, you'll hear Steve talking about the Cooks. Cheerio.
We bubble in a hatter, say Miss Savannah rock you non-stopper. Along with Rankin Roger, me bonafide brother. We believe in a love, not fighting one another. We're gonna hit this batter with all that we got. So listen to the lyrics, we are pimp on the tracker. It no matter if you're slimmer, it no matter if you're fat, and it no matter if you're cold, because you're gonna get hot. We bubbling hot, hot, hot. We bubbling hot, bubbling, bubbling, bubbling. We bubbling hot, hot, hot.
It's Thursday in the UK. It's 4:45 p.m. It's obviously raining, and we're here at Singled Out, a sometimes Guild Ball podcast, to today talk about Guild Ball. And I'm joined, lucky as I am, by the Master of Misery, the man who's walking backwards for Christmas, Valerian Langton.
Good afternoon, viewers.
And the Lord of the Bants, Francois Langton.
Afternoon, all.
So we've got double Langtons for your pleasure for this, the next part in our sort of intro to guilds or guilds in 30 minutes session, where this one will be less than 30 minutes, hopefully, because we're going to talk about a minor guild. And we're going to talk about a minor guild, which is Cooks. I think it's fair to say Cooks are probably one of the ideal guilds to sort of start the game with. You know, they're very straightforward, aren't we? What are the fundamentals of Cooks?
They hit things very hard. They put out an awful lot of damage through Wellington. Basically, they've got loads of buffs spread throughout the team, which they want to focus on one or two models, and then just go and delete models a turn. But you can also use Sugar to go and get snapback goals, because she's got the ability with her special rules, which means on snapshots she gets bonus kick to that. But mostly hitting things, buffs and hitting things.
Yeah, they are the Butcher's Minor Guild, right? They like to punch stuff.
Yeah.
And they have obviously the Intimidation guild rule, so I mean, people will know this, but everything is -1 defense against them. So there's a little bit of changing your sort of how you think of the maths, isn't there? Not quite the same degree as Navigators, but just for one's internal sort of maths. Franco, anything to add to Valerian's executive summary of cooks?
I think they are the glass cannon guild. Their defense isn't that great. There's not that many hit points on anything, so they're definitely killable. But as Valerian said, they put out a lot of damage. So if you can kill stuff faster with them than they die, you win.
Yeah, you want to hit stuff before it hits you, and then you want it to not be able to hit you. Basically, is probably the overriding ethos for them. Should we talk a bit about the sort of players in guild? Because it's a minor guild, we can do a bit more. We can go through a bit more sort of detail on them. So we're not going to do a full card read, but I think it's worth talking about sort of what each of the players do. And I know when we're talking about the major guilds, we're talking about the play style that each captain brings to it, but that is not the case here because you have one captain and you have one mascot. But thankfully, your captain is a good one, which is Wellington. He is statistically pretty standard, right? Sort of, 6-8 move, tack 5. It's essentially, it's not unlike being tack 6. He's got intimidation, 4-1, decent kick, 4-6 influence, and 16 boxes. So, what does Wellington bring to the team?
Damage output and buffs. So he's got a pretty straightforward playbook. It's just damage all the way up with singled out available off the playbook. And he's also got a damage buff. And then the other two things that are kind of important is legendary, which lets everyone get a free character play, which, given there's quite a lot of good character plays in the guild, is super helpful. And then his other trait, Scathing Rebuke, just a useful bit of free condition removal and a bit of a dodge. But mainly you're using him to damage people just because he has 6 influence, can take 6 influence, so you can put out more damage.
I'm just going to come back in on the character play Chef Special, which gives +1 damage to anyone within 4 inches of the chosen model. It is one of the best character plays in the game, simply because it's basically tooled up, but as an aura.
It's okay.
If you get it right, you can get 4 or 5 models benefiting from that one influence character play. It is, for me, the key character play in the entire guild. Also worth noting that Sugar, one of the players, also has it on there as a character play as well.
Yeah, so you've got 2 options for getting it out, so you should be able to get a sort of decent spread of it, right? And so what are you looking to do with Wellington? I mean, is he just a missile, or are you looking to sort of, put the buffs out and stand in the middle of your team? What's the sort of usual? Yeah, how greedy is he as well? I guess
generally you put 6 influence on him. Early game, you tend to use him as a missile. You put all the buffs from the rest of the guild on Wellington, and he just goes and deletes one model because his output's like that. Later on in the game, once you're starting to get the 2 lines kind of a bit more close, or you've got a scrum formed, then you start using things like legendary to give everyone the free character play, and then he can put out the singled out on multiple models, put the Chef Special out. So early game is a missile, mid to late he's a bit more of an all-round team buff.
He's also one of the few players with a knockdown, and with a even an achievable knockdown in guild, right? Because you don't have a lot of that kicking about, do you?
I mean, outside of the charge, even with intimidation, he quite often doesn't hit that until he's hit singled out. So if you want to hit the knockdown, you pretty much need to charge.
Yeah, but I guess the point is, other than Roast and Tenderizer, no one else really has even a knockdown, let alone a sort of relatively achievable.
It's worth noting that if he gets the 1 influence charge from Roast, even having to take the knockdown on the charge, he still kills most models in the game.
That's if he's got Chef Special up, yeah?
Either through his legendary or through Sugar doing it, So he can still afford, whereas a lot of models, if they take the knockdown on the charge, it really hurts their output. Wellington can afford to take the knockdown on the charge and still do a lot of damage to models.
So he's a sort of center of the board, kind of dominate stuff, give yourself as many targets as you can get, and sort of go after stuff, and then sort of get the buffs out, get stuff followed up with your team.
Yeah, he pretty much follows the standard kind of killy control thing. If you're standing within jog range of him, you probably don't want to be because your model may not be there
Yeah.
otherwise.
I guess what he doesn't really like is sort of being engaged at 2 inches, losing tack, things like blind, things like disarmor, high armor.
High armor with a good counter attack.
Yeah.
Because obviously 1 inch reach is a bit of an issue.
Yeah. Don't go after things like Midas with him, I think it's probably fair to say.
Well,
because unpredictable
to be honest, apart from unpredictable, he loves Midas.
Yeah, because it's 4-0. But yeah,
he can knock him down pretty reliably if you've already popped unpredictable. And then Midas disappears in a big cloud of smoke.
Yeah, Cooks are super good at killing Death 5 models.
Yeah. It's also worth noting that what that means is defensive stances aren't actually quite as useful against Cooks in general because of the intimidation rule.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Should we talk about the mascot? Let's talk about Pepper.
Pepper brings Feral, which is a free attack to get a point of influence, and that's kind of about it.
Yeah, Pepper's really fast if you put influence on him with where they go, and has a free attack. So he's really good for getting the ball on the receive, and that's about all he does.
A pretty good target for Chef Special, though, because they're so mobile.
No, not really, because it's not really doing anything, and 6 hit points is quite easy to kill.
Yeah, so quite
squishy. I think if you put Pepper in a position where you're benefiting from Chef Special, the opponent probably just kills him.
Yeah.
Because 6 hit points, even at 5-0, just doesn't do very much, especially in this world of farmers and shepherds with 2 damage on 1 hit.
Makes sense. But is a useful crowd out, I guess, when we're talking about that, because Cooks do like crowd outs and additional dice, and has Feral as well. So it's one of those.
He's almost always. He's going to contribute, but it's normally just that 1 Feral attack, and then just be annoying if someone wants to take the parting blow with Vicious.
Which is pretty good parting blow, because plus 2 attack, plus 1 damage, -1 defense, not bad. So let's talk about the backbone of the guild, I guess. We'll talk about the 2 guild only models, which are quite a good dividing line. Let's talk about them in order of the rhyme. So in terms of Sugar and Spice, let's talk about Sugar, because I think she's probably the most interesting model in the guild, right?
Yeah, so she had, just before they were errated to make them slightly better, she was a bit lackluster. Then they gave her the best AoE character playing the game. On a model that can damage buff itself. She's nominally a striker. You don't score loads of goals just with her. But she has a special rule to boost her snapshot. So she goes up to whatever it is, a 5/10 snapshot with sturdy. So it can't be, unlike other snapshot turrets like Angel, can't be trivially gotten rid of just by knocking them down. And then she has Chef Special, the damage buff again, just like Wellington. And the big play, Chili Cookout, which is a 4 damage and burning AoE. Only on the short range, but she can get it off the playbook, which on a charge with the intimidation is pretty reliable.
Yeah.
And does loads of damage.
Yeah, it goes up to. It's basically just a big dump AoE. It's 4 or 5 damage in an AoE. You can buy it. It can be momentous. So she is.
If your opponent is foolish enough to bunch up and you can get 2 or 3 models with that, it's going to hurt an awful lot.
And also puts out fire, which when we come on to talking about Spice, I think is probably the other.
The other thing about Sugar is, despite normally being a striker, she has Momentous 1 damage on 1, Momentous 2 on 2, and Momentous 3 on 4.
Yeah.
Which, combined with the fact that she has Chef Special, means she has very reliable momentous damage output.
Yeah. You can. If she's in range to hit something, she can usually spend that influence, get you damage, get you momentum.
Yeah.
And I guess, like we were saying with Wellington, she's a model that you want ideally to be positioning fairly central, so you've got more target options for the Chili Cookout. And obviously, the ideal situation is you want her to be within 10 inches of the enemy goal with a clear line of sight. because obviously the other thing she is really good at is hitting snapshots. She hits snapshots better than almost any model in the game.
The other interesting thing
I
on
think
the
it is better
snapshot
than
is
anyone else.
combined with Wellington, because Wellington's trait, Scathing Rebuke, gives
Yeah.
a model a 2-inch dodge. So you can catch people out by sticking Sugar 12 inches away from the opposing goal, use Wellington to dodge her into snapshot range, and have Wellington pass her the ball to make a snapshot.
Yeah.
So
That's
you So it's just a little trick that will catch people out if you can get it off.
And I think the interesting thing with that is also, I guess, what Wellington doesn't do, or what they don't, the way they achieve 6-point activations is kind of interesting, right? They can do it, but it usually involves killing a model and then passing the ball to Sugar. So it's a sort of slightly, so your threat angles are slightly different from, I guess, when you and I talked in the Union podcast, that, Vet Rage will occasionally get 6-point activations, but he'll have to score the goal himself. This is actually much more reliable.
Yeah.
Than a lot of fight. It's a lot more reliable than a lot of fighting teams' 6-point activation potential. So
and as you said, you can do it from a fair way away. So Wellington can kill someone who's 18, 20 inches away from the goal, and if Sugar's in the right place for the snapshot, you can still score the goal without having to even put Wellington out of position to do it. You can still be in the middle of the board, ready for next turn.
She's also a good model, like if your opponent is being careful about sort of coming to you and you have the ball, standing her 10 inches from the goal with any model that's in the position to pass the ball to her is essentially threatening a goal. So it can sort of force your opponent to come and try and engage you when they really don't want to. So there's that option as well. So then the next guild-only model is Spice. I guess the other thing to say with Sugar is she's, by Cook's standards, reasonably tanky. 3-2, 14 boxes. It's only 1 inch, but Spice is not tanky. She's got Crucible's defensive stats essentially, 4-0, 14 boxes. But she interacts really well with Sugar.
She loves people being on fire, basically.
Yeah. She just does.
Intensify to damage everyone within 3 who's on fire. Enemy models who are on fire, I suppose I should point out. So you can't accidentally or intentionally kill your own players.
She's got a pretty good all-round damaging playbook. Again, starting with Momentous 1-on-1, going all the way up to Momentous 4-on-5.
Yeah.
The Intensify is Momentous and it's on 2 hits. So she only brings 2 influence, but she's got Berserk. So generally, you want her to jog to someone, because if she starts charging, it really limits her output.
Yeah.
But if you can jog to someone, hit them 4 times, you're generally dealing quite a lot of damage.
And it can go, she probably has the highest potential output of anyone in the guild, right? Because she has assist with Pepper, and then all of the sort of interactions with Burning. So she can be doing, not a lot of setup, 3 damage on 1 hit.
Yeah, it's also a kind of good indication of the synergy between the models in the Cooks. So they've all got, momentous damage, but they can all set one another up.
Yeah.
For example, Roasts, who we'll come on to's 1 infinite charge aura. If Spice can use that, if Pepper's in there, if someone's put Chef Special out for the damage buff as well, there's all sorts of bits and pieces that kind of add up to doing even more damage.
Yeah.
Depending on what bits you've put in where.
I mean, they're not sort of unlike blacksmiths, weirdly, are they? In the sense that, like, if you get the right setup, they'll just delete stuff. Like,
so the listeners can't see this, but we're looking a bit quizzical when Steve went, Cooks are like blacksmiths.
In terms of the output, like, if you have enough, like, in the same way that blacksmiths will put out, like, Singled Out and Stagger and Knockdown and Searing Strike, and then they'll just evaporate
I think
models.
it's done very differently, though, because blacksmiths tend to put their buffs out on enemy models a lot of the time.
Debuffs out.
Cooks tend to put buffs out on their own models.
Yeah.
So it's a slightly different way. Yeah, they both do the buffs, debuffs, but it's just a slightly different way of buffing the output.
That makes sense. So Sugar Spice quite, and 2-inch reach, which is kind of reasonably uncommon in the guild. Like, they don't have a lot
of it, no.
So yeah, she's more less less subtle than Sugar, I guess, and like apply Two-Faced with as many buffs as possible, right?
Yep.
And try not to leave Stranded in front of enemy models because she dies pretty quickly.
Yeah.
She's the most fragile model in the guild.
Yeah.
Which is because you do have to be careful because she is also she's probably your primary output squaddy.
Mm.
So she's one you don't want to lose, and she is vulnerable to going down. She's got double dodge on her counter attack, which is achievable.
Yeah.
But it's not sort of ideal. So should we talk about let's talk about the sort of two crossover ones. So Roast and Cinnamon.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Cinnamon first of all, shall we? So another 2-inch reach model. Very sort of Cooksy playbook. But she is primarily there for one big reason, right?
Yeah.
She's probably she's amazing. Cinnamon is if you don't play Cinnamon, you're doing it wrong. Get a set bake or a buff +2/+2 move buff for anyone within that aura is just, particularly in the modern game of Guild Ball as it is, every team has move buffs. You really, really need that speed buff. And because it's an aura, means you can get 2 or 3 models potentially utilizing it. She's also got anatomical precision as well as intimidation, which means that if she can get a couple of buffs or a couple of gang ups on an opponent model, she can start doing quite a lot of damage as well. Just giving them -1 defense and -1 armor when she's attacking. So she's a very good secondary damage dealer, as well as just providing the movement buffs.
Yep, I've definitely caught people out of that because actually, under Chef Special, which is, as we said, such a big part of what cooks do, she puts out a surprising amount of damage. And if you've got someone on half health or less, she can jog up to them. She can probably kill them.
Yeah.
If she needs to.
Again, a very real. If you go Chef Special out, she's hitting 6 damage on a jog at least.
Yeah, minimum.
And if it comes down to it, she's pretty quick and can score a goal.
She's also got a reliable tackle. It's on 2, but again with intimidation and anatomical precision, it's pretty reliable most of the time. So she's good at getting the ball back off people.
Makes sense. And then I guess Roast, who fulfills not a dissimilar role in a way to Cinnamon. They're primarily there they do loads of interesting stuff. They're primarily there for a buff, right?
Mm-hmm. Although Roast tends to do a bit more than just put his buff out, because he's also one of the more killy models in a killy guild.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
His buff that you generally use is for a 2-inch aura for 1 influence charge, which if you can get it on even one other model than Roast is worth it. He's got the best knockdown in the guild by far, and has resilience, 18 hit points but 2-0, so he does die fairly quickly if you pop resilience.
He does have big belly as well, which can be quite useful. Basically, whenever an enemy damage, they get push 1 inch away, particularly given he has pushes all the way through his playbook. So if he declares a counter attack plus big belly, you're getting pushed at least 2 inches away. So you need to be base to base with him, even if you've got 2-inch melee, to avoid getting pushed out. And even then, he's still got an achievable double push as well.
Yeah, and there are tricks that your opponent can use against that. Standing between cover, put a mascot behind you or another squad. I guess he's the model you probably need to be most we're saying you need to be careful with Spice because she dies easily. Roast is one of those models that if you see models in the opposition team that either have AoE damage, Fangtooth or Veteran Catalyst, or you see models that can hit sort of Siren or something like that, you need to be really careful with Roast around them.
Yes,
because he can be great and he can do a lot of really good stuff, and he's pretty high tack as well. Tack 6 with intimidation is really good, but he also is another source of burning. But also your whole team can evaporate if if Gutter gets hold of him, you're in a very sad place.
The other thing to be worried about is people like Sledge, because if you can clear his resilience, he's only got defense 2. I've killed him on the charge with Sledge, Anvil having just cleared resilience off him.
Yeah.
Because two defense, someone charges, they're getting a wrap and they're causing pain.
Yeah. So he is probably more. He's not like when we're saying about, I guess, what you're coming in sort of waves, I guess, with cooks, aren't you? So you're coming in often with like Wellington and with sort of the sugar AOE, and then with spice, and roast is probably not. It's probably the back of that way. Like you will apply him in the right situation, and he can be a really good model to go first with almost, and finish someone off, and then put his buffs out. But he's not leading the charge, right?
Not unless you desperately need someone knocked down. No.
Yeah.
And
then you've got two other models who are the Butcher's crossover models. So Shank is probably the more versatile crossover. He's Shank. He's really good.
Shank tends to fulfill the same kind of role as Spice.
Yeah.
I find they've got similar movement, although Shank has where they go. Both got 2-inch melee. Both put out similar amounts of damage. Spice puts out slightly more, but Shank does it with a bit more flexibility due to his extra movement abilities. The other thing about Shank, in particular reference to Wellington's Legendary, which gives everyone free character play, a 3,000 cut is utterly amazing.
Yeah.
And it just turns Shank into an absolute monster on that Legendary turn.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy because obviously it being a 3 dice character play means it's really unlikely you're going to miss. Like it's just, it's got a lot going for it. Yeah, he's more mobile, isn't he, than Spice? Yeah. And I have seen people use him in them to sort of get goals and things like that as well because of that mobility. Like,
I mean, where they go is just such a good ability in general. Having that flexibility is great.
Yeah, I mean, having two models available in Guild with Where They Go
it's okay. Good. It's not bad, right? For I mean, what he doesn't give you is the synergy. He doesn't give you the same synergy that you get with Spice, but it might be. But he can do it. He can definitely do a job in that slot. And if you feel like, I don't think I'd replace Spice with him. I can't think of a situation like that. But maybe you replace Wellington with him Roast with him on occasion.
I've tended to swap between him and Spice. Swap those two out. Use those two as the swaps. In general.
When would you take him over Spice?
I generally take him more than Spice because he's so much more flexible,
right?
And because I don't feel that a lot of the time you need the extra damage output of Spice, because you already have Wellington and Shank and Roast, and then at a pinch, you've still got the other models as well. And also because he's got Where They Go on a counter attack, he's less vulnerable to just dying than Spice is.
Yeah. And I guess even then, if he's better able to escape, even if he gets pinned down, right? If
you're against a team that is less maneuverable, then I think Spice is probably the pick because you don't need to chase them down so much, which Shank does. If you've got a team that's just going to come at you, then you just go, right, Spice, she's got the extra damage. I don't have to chase their team around the whole pitch. I can just go and hit them straight up.
I can kind of see the argument for replacing Roast with Shank if you're worried about him getting abused by Gutter or Fangtooth or whatever. Roast, that is.
Yeah.
And also, it's another 2-inch melee model.
And then the last model is a very specific use, right? Is Tenderizer, is Goalkeeper. A lot of the time your selection of Tenderizer will depend on whether you get the goal defense card. I think, if you're playing
for that one turn.
Just that one turn where Navigators are scoring on 6s, right? He makes it harder for goal scoring teams to score. He has a very reliable knockdown, his tackle, all that sort of stuff that you know about him. He's probably the hardest model to kill in Guild. 19 boxes, 2-inch.
At least that's partly just because he's standing near your goal rather than going forwards most of the time, though.
Yeah, it's true, and he's also he's a very good ball holder into guilds that are looking to get the ball back via tackles.
He's got a very strong counter attack. Yeah.
Because that knocked out is
or the tackle double push,
and he's got 2-inch melee as well. So you play him into guilds that want to go 3-0 against you, basically.
Miners, people like that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's really, really good at what he does, but you wouldn't bring him into fighting teams for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Although he does still have a really good playbook for damage, because again, it's momentous damage most of the way up. And capping out at oddly the highest single damage in the guild.
Oh yeah.
He's the only one with momentous 5.
Oh, yeah, he does,
this
doesn't he?
playbook.
Which
Obviously you're not hitting that very often, but
it's
an
not
option.
unachievable though.
And if you charge someone who's been knocked down or whatever, or you've got a couple of crowd outs, it's definitely doable.
So he's quite good at kind of giving him a couple of influence, activating first, and finishing off a striker model, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think Celebrate this is actually a pretty, against certain guilds particularly, Celebrate this is a really good play, because I know, it's great, Vitriol scores, Tenderizer takes a third of her health off, but actually, like, there are quite a lot of tough, like, hard to kill strikers, like people like Spade or Velocity, and actually getting that auto damage really changes the maths on it. So those are the models. Those are the 8 players you've got. We've gone into them in a bit more detail than we have with the major guilds. What are your tactics? What are you looking to do? Basic level, you're looking to kick or receive, and I'm sure we're going to have a dividing line here.
Go on.
Listener, this is going to shock you what Valerian is going to say.
Into fighting guilds, you want to receive, camp in a corner, and basically missile Wellington in and out. Because having the ball means you have momentum control, means you can have activation advantage, you can put all the buffs onto Wellington, he just goes and kills a model. Next turn, he runs back into your team. You set up with Spice or Shank to do exactly the same thing. That's kicking into football guilds, into fighting guilds. You're basically doing a very similar thing, except you're chucking your entire team up the table and just trying to kill things as fast as possible. Football guilds, it depends on the football guild. 3-0 guilds, you generally want to sit back, play defensive with Tenderizer, put the speed buff out to threat going out so they can't just stand off at you. More 2-2 guilds, or even 1-4 guilds, you're actually looking to position Wellington and Sugar in the midfield and look for those snapbacks, and just try and outfight your opponent and get that snapback goal to get ahead.
I'm not sure I entirely agree. I think into 3-0 teams, actually, you want to be super aggressive. Because I think that getting right up in the middle, starting killing models and threatening the snapback is most important there. Because if you can basically do 2 6-point activations, they don't have time to score 3 goals. You want to score. If you score and kill a model when they score, you win. Whereas if you're sat in a corner, you're not threatening the goal, so you're killing their striker every time. But they're still scoring 3 goals before you've got 6 takeouts.
Yeah, I think I probably sit somewhere. I can see the Wellington missile being really good. I think I've tended to win the few games I've played with them. I've tended to get, when I've won games, I've tended to do it through a takeout and a snapshot, and then another takeout and a snapshot. Rather than any sort of, rather than that sort of, because the trouble is they are squishy. Yeah. So like, I guess when you play defensively, there's a real risk. I've had people play them defensively against like alchemists, and it's not just that they then concede a goal on turn 1, it's that they concede a goal and their entire team's down 3 health. So it's tricky. I think they don't weather stuff well, and actually chip damage is really bad against them.
I think they're actually one of the guilds that their plan really, really depends on what other guild they're playing against.
Okay, yeah.
Whereas there are a lot of guilds where you have a slightly more fixed overview of how you're playing into a lot of other teams. Cooks, because you're right, because they're so squishy, tend to be a bit more flexible.
So Charles Nurse summed them up quite interesting when he came to the tournament we had in London last Christmas, when we used to play in person. Well, you two do play in person now, but when others used to play in person, he just said they're a guild that rewards doing the fundamentals of Guild Ball well. They reward that. It's get the basics right. And they're actually quite, because they, and they really reward you in that, stack, make sure you're going with the right model first, make sure you've got the right threat ranges and the right position to go. And I know that sounds like sort of a really anodyne statement, but you're not looking to do anything incredibly janky with them.
No.
You're looking to do fundamental stuff sort of quickly and efficiently.
I think that's probably a pretty good summary. And they're reasonably forgiving just because they're a fighting guild that can put out lots of damage. So you can, if something goes wrong, you can still just kill things. You're not relying on goals, which is always just that little bit riskier if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
So often if you miss a goal, it puts you in a really terrible position because you lose the model that tried it and the ball's generally somewhere you don't want it to be.
The other thing is also they're not focused through one model necessarily. While Wellington is obviously the major output model, all their models have good momentous damaging playbooks. So all of the entire guild can support the game plan.
And I guess the other thing is everyone is slightly, I think building on that, everyone is slightly redundant. Like you have a guild that is designed to be missiles. Like this is not a guild it's not like blacksmiths, right? They're not, in that sense, they're not designed to start a fight and then just grind it out. Like, they're going to go in, they're going to do a ton of damage, then they might die, but then the other models come and do a ton of damage, and you keep building out from there.
Yeah.
Are they fun? What do you guys think of them? Do you like playing them?
Well,
I mean, Valerian's not capable of actually having fun, but
I have fun. Whether my opponents have fun is an entirely different issue. So I stopped playing Cooks because I found I was playing them very, very miserably, and I couldn't shake that mindset. So I started opponents in particular. One opponent in particular, one of our locals. I was basically completely and utterly miserable to him, and I basically dropped Cooks after that tournament because I found I just couldn't play them in a fun way.
Did you drop them after that tournament, Valerian?
Yes.
Or did you drop them after another tournament?
No, you took them to another tournament.
Oh, that's a shame. I'd like to feel like I'd ruined your, like I had with Corsair. Anyway, Franco, what do you think? Are they fun?
I think they are fun. They're a team that rewards you being aggressive generally, unless you're Valerian.
Yeah, fair.
He basically plays them like Scalpel. Morticians.
Yeah.
Which, if you want to do, why not just play Scalpel? She does
but
more
they
fun
can
stuff
work
than
like
Wellington.
that. I guess that's interesting, isn't it? They can support more than one play style.
Yeah, I think it is a team that can do different things because although they're primarily fighting, they can score goals. You're unlikely to score 3 goals, just because you're probably not hitting people to kill stuff at that point.
2 is very doable.
2 is definitely doable, and as we were saying, 2 6-point activations from Wellington or another model is pretty doable if you get Sugar into the right place.
Yeah, or even things like we're saying earlier with the Shank with the legendary, that tackle on the third column when you've got 3,000 cuts. Yeah, that's happening.
Actually becomes achievable, whereas normally trying to tackle models with Shank is a bit futile.
Yeah. Brilliant. I think that's Cooks in 30 minutes or just over. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm sure we will see you. I've got a sneaking suspicion we will see you on this series again at some point. So thank you, Valerian Langton, and thank you, Francois Langton.